Remember, the 2024 election was a referendum on institutional trust. Only 30% trust the federal government. And then Doge gets in, and America's like, oh, we were right to not trust the federal government. Ted attributes this to me, but I don't necessarily think so. But a Donald Trump truth, for a very long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. Yep. It was the reward for working hard and doing the right thing. This is excellent because the complaint of the younger people is we did what you told us to do. We followed the rules of the system and your system failed us. Excellent. But now, because of record high inflation caused by Biden and the Democrats in Congress, well, it's like, okay, I guess Trump's not going to acknowledge the Republican role in this, but whatever. That American dream is increasingly out of reach for far too many people, especially younger Americans. It is for that reason and much more that I'm immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes. And I will be calling on Congress to codify it. People live in homes, not corporations. So this is cool. Your Democrat socialist under 40 voter is going to look at this and be like, that's excellent. That's excellent. This is smashing the oligarchy that I asked for. Now, what's really happening behind the scenes is they're probably making a deal about it. And I would love to see them be forced to divest some of it. But Trump doesn't really want to crash the real estate market. I don't know. But I mean, the messaging, you know what I mean? It's like there are limitations. He can't just go and just completely crash every market. I think it would actually kind of help because I think the older voters would still vote for Republicans. But Congress can codify a few things in the 2 bites of reconciliation they still get, which is why, in my opinion, it's very important to have a plan laid out so they can be very intentional with America about what's getting codified because they only got a couple shots. And that's what I told Trump. Because what's going to happen is all this stuff's going to actually get codified and nobody's going to know what it is. And then there's this. JD announces that the Trump administration will create a new assistant attorney general position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud, focusing first primarily in Minnesota and then expanding nationwide. We'll look at the polling, but this is like almost getting Doge handed back. Because remember, Doge was more popular than Trump was. Doge gave the Republicans the youth zeitgeist. Doge gave Trump all of this narrative cover, and it validated everybody. Remember, the 2024 election was a referendum on institutional trust. Only 30% trust the federal government. And then Doge gets in, and America's like, oh, we were right to not trust the federal government. And then Doge goes poof and disappears. Run out of town by Republicans. But now we've been given Doge back. And it's like, okay, well, if Republicans can't govern between now and November of 2026, at least federal agents and the military and whoever can flood every Democrat state and go after the insane amounts of fraud that we all know is there now. We might not even have a deficit problem. That's what's incredible. And, then he keeps going. He's talking about using the $200 billion that the government-sponsored entities have in cash on hand in order to buy down the mortgage rate. It's like that will probably result in an increase in prices. So I don't know. Like, that's not my favorite way to fix the problem, but you can tell they're going after it in a multifaceted approach. What I would do if I was Trump is just come out and say, listen, the house prices are too high. It's median home price is higher than median income. Historically speaking, it's the worst it's ever been. And we are going to crash the housing market. And then people will run for the exits. And that's what we want is, in my opinion, is the people running in a crowded theater to the exits. Then there's this. I don't know how real this is, but we like Peter Bernegger here, and he has sources. President Trump to sign an executive order before the midterm election, eliminating mail-in ballots and voting machines. Now, I heard that this was coming before Thanksgiving, but I still think it's coming. President Trump is going to do it, the executive order to ban voting machines and absentee mail-in ballots with rare exceptions. Now, what we also, too, we have the Liberty Vote buying Dominion in a forced sale and essentially recertifying the Dominion equipment, which I assume will mean that they have to get all new components that aren't manufactured in China and that they won't be able to use Smartmatic software if the certification means anything. And that all might happen before November 2026 too. And I have no idea what the implications of that are. Then you have this. You love to see it. India is still buying oil they're not supposed to. Bad India. Trump's going to tariff them 500%. That should go on offshore labor, though. I think that would be excellent because I think India offshores about $120 billion a year in annual salaries. And obviously, those salaries would be higher if it was done by Americans onshore. But then, you do have the Republicans. The U.S. House just passed a bill to give billions of dollars to big, rich insurance companies through Obamacare. What a bunch of traitors. So Democrats' plan was to extend Obamacare subsidies because Obamacare is their beast. And the Republicans were like, well, we've had 10 years. We pay hundreds of millions to think tanks, but we don't have a plan for health care. And then so some of the Republicans defected and said, well, we'll just do the Democrat plan. And it's because, as we know, a lot of these people are bought and paid for by health insurance companies and by pharmaceutical companies. It's not all winning, folks. It's not all winning. But based on testimony today, according to Anna Polina Luna, I have enough evidence to believe that Tim Walz and Keith Ellison, AG of Minnesota, were knowingly complicit in a Somali fraud scheme in Minnesota. Therefore, I've referred them both to the DOJ for criminal charges. May justice be swift. Now, Pam Bondi, I don't know. I just don't know. But what's wild is that Tim Walz is already not running. He dropped out. And he is getting sort of uppity up there. He's pulling a Fort Dumpter. He doesn't like ICE there. He's freaking out, him and Mayor Frey from Minneapolis. And they're talking a really big game about using National Guard troops to get ICE out of Minnesota. And I think ICE has an imperative, a moral imperative for the American taxpayer to get rid of these people who are perpetrating fraud. I would love for the FBI to be there, in a huge RICO case, tracing all this. I understand that a bunch of agents did go. I don't know if they're DOJ or FBI. Obviously not enough. And obviously we have a new assistant attorney general we're going to get that's going to go after this stuff. But if you're Tim Walz and your odds are to sit around and wait for being arrested or to stage a mini insurrection, I kind of wonder what he thinks his odds are. And looking at past Republicans and looking at the way that even Trump, to some extent, has had, the hobbles on, right? Inability to completely do everything that you would want to see. It might be a good bet to call up the National Guard. There were implications with the Supreme Court ruling where I don't think Trump's allowed to do that. But I guess Trump is allowed to call in the military now, and I'm sure that he's allowed to do things like declare a state of emergency or martial law and use the Insurrection Act. And, part of me thinks if the Democrats are going to accelerate, maybe the right answer is just to accelerate faster because you have the moral high ground. This is all principled. The taxpayers work hard for their money. They shouldn't have tens of billions of dollars stolen from them. Yeah, this is the funny thing about Nick Shirley, and this is why it's so embarrassing. So let me go. I think it's the next tweet. Let me go one more tweet. And no, hold on, it's this one. So Scott Besson says, holy crap, he just confirmed that up to $600 billion of annual fraud in taxpayer dollars, nearly 10% of all government spending. Elon Musk called it end all fraud. And then Besant says, we're going to hold people accountable. We're going to press this to the full extent possible. American taxpayers for American families, the Government Accountability Office, the General Accounting Office believes there's somewhere between 300 billion and 600 billion of annual fraud. And I don't even think they're talking about all of the misallocated spending that happens in Medicare and Medicaid, to be honest with you. I think we probably got a cool trillion. We could just cut the deficit in half. But this is what's so wild about Nick Shirley is that just think about it. We have the FBI. We have the DOJ. We have the FBI costs $11 billion a year. We have every state law enforcement entity in Minnesota. We have the IRS. We have all these trade organizations, for the money that gets remitted back to Somalia, the State Department. We have all this stuff. Like, we know Somalia, 1/3 of its GDP is remittances. Where's all that money coming from? We have all that. We have multi-billion-dollar media companies with journalists. And it took one guy with an iPhone to go to Minneapolis and blow this whole thing up. And now look at this. You have the Department of Treasury, Secretary of Treasury, talking about how they're going to end this. You have a new attorney general. Like, this dude is a hero. But what does this say about our system? How, like, fall of the Roman Empire is it that if Nick Shirley hadn't gotten off of his couch and gone up to Minneapolis and filmed a couple of freaking child health care centers or whatever, child care centers, that we wouldn't be doing this? And now it's dropped in the lap of Republicans. Listen, if they're not going to pass reconciliation, if they're going to, like, shut down the government again, all they need to do is just raid blue cities between now and November 2026. And I think public opinion will be there for them. Oh, what else did he say? He said on Laura Ingraham tonight, we don't need lower housing prices. We need lower interest rates. I don't think so. I think that lower interest rates get priced into housing bids very rapidly. If you can afford more house, you can afford to pay more, you're going to bid against somebody else. And because I still think the issue is that in many places we have limited supply. And it's because we haven't deported enough people. There's a lot of people who are sitting on their houses because they don't want to take a hit on the paper gains. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Maybe there's economic studies that show that it doesn't get priced into houses. This is the way that all the investors keep their high water marks on their carried interest on their investment funds. That's who this protects. Lower interest rates always helps the rich people. It makes it easier to paper over malfeasance in corporations. Like, it's just bad. It's just freaking bad. Now, one of the reasons they also want to lower the interest rates, obviously, is to reduce the size of the interest payment on the national debt. So, I mean, it's somewhat good, but they want to juice the economy. Like, they want an 8% GDP print. And it's like, I still think a year from now, the median first-time homebuyer age is going to be 39 and a half. And they're going to say, look, it's going in the right direction, but we just hit 8% GDP. And I think most Zoomers and millennials, like, still aren't going to be able to buy a house. Like, I'm not being a doomer. This is reality, man. It's like they're going to do mission accomplished on whatever economic print that they can find that's good next October. I think Gen Z and millennials deserve better than that. I really do. I want to bring up a chart that you might not have seen. Generational wealth. This is apparently pretty updated. Look, it has 2020, but there's a lot more room on the chart. And boomers own, like, looking at this, just eyeballing, 60% of all wealth in America. And they also are about 60% of Congress and Senate. The boomers are still running things. The boomers still have all the money. But what's kind of wild too, and Gen X is doing well, but they're obviously not asserting their influence on America to the same extent that boomers are. They didn't build these systems. They didn't grow up in these systems. They were just along for the boomer ride. And it's like, okay, your boomer might be your gold watch guy that came up with a corporation, started in the mailroom. Your Gen X guy is like Gordon Gekko, who went and got an MBA, and he runs a private equity shop that just rolls up mom and pop businesses and fires everybody. Like, that's probably your Gen X guy, the nomad, just out for, like, greed is good. But what's wild is that you look at the silence, and yeah, I'm right on the border between X and millennial. So, but you look at the silence, these people are like over 80. They're like 81 and older. And the silent generation in America still owns more wealth than millennials do. And the millennials are at the prime of their, like, career lives. That's kind of bleak. Like, that's kind of appallingly bad. And Gen Z is not even on the freaking chart. Like, they own negative wealth, probably. Gen Z probably goes down, and they just decided to clip the chart at 0. Like, you know what I mean? It's like when the silent generation owns 10% of all wealth here or whatever. And Gen Z is not even playing along. And these people, a lot of them are incels sitting around playing video games, working jobs, accruing money. I know a lot of Gen Z people, and they're financially responsible. They don't blow their money on avocado toast and Starbucks. They actually, like, save their money and live. A lot of them live at home and stuff like that. And they're not even playing the game. It's wild.